So I don't think this is going to be a review, but I started playing The Tide at Sunrise solo, and I just wanted to kind of go over a little bit. It's an interesting game so far. Like I said, I've only played one turn. Um, for the map is absolutely beautiful. Kind of covers this southeastern peninsula. There's China up there. So Russia is controlling, or starts off controlling this area. The Japanese will come up through here. They only start with 6 units in here, and then further they can come onto the map along this coastline east of this hex here until they control this. Basically, the Japanese are trying to control the victory point cities, and they also get victory points for eliminating Russian units. So it starts off, like I said, the Japanese only have 6 units down here. The Russians have 4 that start just west of this river here. And they have some garrison troops up here, and then a little garrison right there. But there are more units that will come on as the game progresses. So typical zone of control stuff with some interesting movement along with it. The combat results table seems to be mostly retreats with some disruption. Let's take a look. Typical stuff here. That's the disrupted side, and that's how they come on. So each turn, the Japanese will get to go. They first will get attacked, possibly from the fort down here if the Russian player chooses, which may disrupt their replacement points. It's then movement, combat. There are some ranged artillery. There's a 75 millimeter there and a 120 underneath it. Yeah. So the Japanese player moves and then combat, and then make sure they're within supply, which the Japanese just get supply here or from one of these 2 ports if they control it. And then they get replacement points based on the turn, and then whatever points they allocate each turn, each player will get a certain number of points based on the turn track, and then they can say that they want to use some of those points to bring more troops in, or they can put them down here on the replacement points, and what those replacement points are used for is to flip counters at the end of the turn if you want that were disrupted. So far it's looking pretty intriguing. Everything I've read for this base game is that it's very, very hard for the Japanese to win, because basically they have to get to 70 points by the end of the game or they lose. And 70 points seems like quite a bit. But so yeah, like I said, I just playing one turn, I'm already seeing some interesting things going on. If a disrupted unit, which these Russians were at the beginning of their turn, if a disrupted unit is in the zone of control of another unit, it has to move out of that zone of control. So the Japanese attacked, the Russians had to retreat, and they were disrupted. The Japanese then pursued them and got back into the Russian zone of control, so I guess put the Russians back into the Japanese zone of control, which then on the Russian turn, those units then had to retreat, and then at the end of the turn, they got to use replacement points to flip them back over. So I can see it definitely being, for the Russians, like most games with Russians, the Russians are just trying to hold off the attack. These Russian infantry units here are a 3 combat factor with 6 movement, whereas these Japanese are 9 and 8. The Russians do have some 10-6 combat units, which are pretty good. But to bring them on is six of the transport points or reinforcement points. So definitely interesting so far, even with just only 10 units being in, or 6 and 4 units being involved in this first turn. But I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. We're now halfway through turn 4. The Japanese just scored their first points of the game by eliminating 4 Russian units. Right in here, they were defending Darien and Nanshan. The Japanese are obviously trying to head in here to Port Arthur, which will then make it easier for them to sweep up north along the railroad, which is here, scoring victory points along the way as they capture these cities. The Japanese also landed someone here at Dagushan, heading up the road through the Fenshui Pass. And so this front, I guess, has been pretty slow going. The Japanese will attack, the Russians retreat a little bit, Japanese retreat, Japanese attack. Same thing here. There's only one more unit in both of these. They're currently disrupted. The Russian player will probably use some replacement points to get them back up to full health, but there's also some disrupted units here and potentially some more in here. The Russian player might just have to forfeit Port Arthur and they can bring troops in here, so maybe try to start a new defensive front somewhere right in here and try to cut the Japanese off just north of this mountain range here. Still very intriguing. I like what's going on. It's definitely attritional. The Japanese, I guess both players really are faced with a decision of bringing a lot of troops in or just replacing the troops that are there that get disrupted. The Russians have put 12 of their replacement points into Port Arthur in hopes to sustain those troops there, but that might be a lost cause at this point, which is 20 points for the Japanese player if they capture it. Darien here is 5. So things are looking a little bit better for the Japanese, but it's going to be a long another 8 months.